Hello student, let us start our chapter Resources and Development of Class 10th. This is our third part. As we already done the definition of resources, its importance and characteristics in the first part. Then in the second part we classify the resources on their different bases, and now today in this part let us take the topic development of resources. Resources, we are time to time regularly developing the resources. Like this is a piece of land. Thousands of years ago we are using this piece of land for gathering purpose and also for settling purpose. Then a few years after, we start doing, time to time we start using machines and take as maximum output as we can, and now we are using this land piece for different purposes also. So time to time we are, but we see the development of resources for the, it is a necessary exercise for utilizing of resources is not only exploitation but the preservations and its reuse also. Now the point which comes here is the points to kept in mind while using the natural resources. Whenever we use resources, we always keep these points in our mind that renewable resources should not be put for wrong use, or we can say polluted. Non-renewable resources should be used properly and should be preserved for future generation also. Human beings have used the resources indiscriminately, and this has led to the following major problems. What are these major problems which we are facing at present? The first one is the depletion of resources for satisfying the greed of, that is the greed of few individuals. There are few individuals, they are using resources too much to fulfill their needs or to satisfy themselves, but this moves to the depletions of resources. Now the next thing is the accumulation of resources in just few hands. Means resources are in reach of few countries only. As we all know that resources are unevenly distributed, like petroleum. In petroleum, the Gulf countries are rich while the rest countries are poor. The 25% of resources are found only in two major countries of the world, that is USA and USSR. So this is how we see the accumulation of resources in few hands only, which in turn divide the society into two segments, and obviously these two segments are the poor and the rich countries of the world. Indiscriminate exploitation of resources has led to global ecological crisis, like at present what we are facing, global warming or the greenhouse effect problem because of the indiscriminate use of resources, ozone layer depletion, environment pollution, land degradation. So these are some problems which we are facing just because of the indiscriminate using or exploitation of resources. So these are the major problems, that is the depletions of resources just because of the satisfying the greed of few individuals. On the other hand, accumulations in just few hands of few countries and the indiscriminate exploitations of resources. Now come to the next important term, which is sustainable development. Now what is the meaning of the word sustainable? Sustainable means to continue. First time the world heard this word in the year 1972 Earth Summit. The sustainable development. This sustainable development cover these 3 points, and these 3 points are the that we should take place without damaging, or we can say harming the environment. Means we should use resources, but always keep this thing in our mind that should not harm the environment. Judicial use of resources. Judicial use of resources means the right use of resources. For example, for bathing, if we use bucket, then we need only 20 liters of water, while if we use shower, then we need multiply by 50 times more water. So it is better to use bucket for bathing instead of using shower. That is called the judicial use of resources. And the next thing is the present should not compromise with the needs of the future generation. There is an advertisement comes in televisions when father stopped the car during the traffic lights but not off the car. The son sitting just behind the father, he said to father that father पापा मेरे लिए एक साइकिल की दुकान खोल दीजिए आप. And father says why? तो बच्चा कहता है कि जिस तरह से आप पेट्रोल को मिसयूज कर रहे हैं, तो जब तक मैं बड़ा होऊंगा हमारे लिए तो पेट्रोल बचेगा नहीं, लोग कार साइकिलें यूज करेंगे, तो मेरे लिए सबसे ज्यादा प्रॉफिटेबल बिजनेस तो साइकिल का ही रहेगा ना. So this ad itself shows is a good example of this, that we should keep this thing also in our mind. This thing is called the sustainable development. We understand it through other example also, like at present the development rate of India is this much is India's development rate, means the needs of iron ore, our country needs this much of iron ore, but at present we are exploiting this much of iron ore from earth's ore. The rest part, that is this part of iron ore, that is that part of iron ore which we are exporting to other countries. If we need this much, our development ratio is this much, then we should use only this much of iron ore and keep this iron ore for our future generation. If we go like this, then this is called the sustainable development, and this is the idea of sustainable development. The next thing which is in our book is the Earth Summit of 1992, which was held in one of the densely populated city of the world, that is the Rio de Janeiro of Brazil. The Rio Conventions endorsed the global forest principles and adopted the Agenda 21 for achieving the sustainable development in the 21st century. What is this Agenda 21? It is the declaration signed by the world leaders in the year 1922 in Rio de Janeiro summit in Brazil. Its main aim is to achieve global sustainable development. It is an agenda to combat environmental damage. We have to combat environmental damage or harming the environment, poverty, world poverty, disease through global cooperations on common interest, the mutual needs of the countries, and also shared responsibilities. One major objective of the Agenda 21 is that every local government should draw its own local agenda as like the countries drawn here. This is one of the important part of the chapter sustainable development. I hope this thing is clear. Now let us come to the next part, and that is resource planning. Now the first question comes in resource planning is the need. Why we need resource planning? Resource planning is essential for the sustainable existence of all forms of life, as we all know that resources are unevenly distributed. For that, we have to use resources in a planned manner. The importance of it. Planning is widely accepted strategy for judicial use, good for use judicially. It has importance in a country like India, especially in our country, India, where resources are unevenly distributed. So it is good to use resources in a planned manner. There are some regions which can be considered self-sufficient in terms of availability of resources, and there are some regions which have acute shortage of some vital resources. This calls for balanced resource planning at national, state, regional and local levels. The resource planning in India. Under the resource planning in India, the first step that we are doing is the identifications of resources. Identifications means the inventory of resources. This includes surveying, mapping, quantitative and qualitative estimations and measurement of the resources. After this, what we need is the evolving a planning structure to endowed with appropriate technology, skill, and setting up the institutions in a country for implementing resource development plans in our country. The next thing is the matching the resource development with country's development plan. As I give you here example that the country's development and this much while we are using this much of extracting this much of resources. No, we should use resources or matching the resources according to this. So these three, the identification of resources, evolving plan, in structure to adopt the resources, and matching with the country's development of resources. Now the questions comes in our mind is that do do we think that mere availability of resources in a particular region can lead to its development? Availability of resources, sorry, availability of resources is a necessary conditions for the development of any region. But mere availability of resources in the absence of corresponding changes in technology and institution may hinder the development. Now in India there are many regions which are rich in resources. On other hand, there are many regions which are too much backward in these resources. On the contrary, there are some regions which are poor, as I said. The resources can be contributed the development only when they are accompanied by appropriate technological development and institutional changes. This is how we can use resources through a proper planning with the setup of institutions with high technology, the latest technology. We get the best result. That's all in resources. I hope the word resources is clear in your mind. Now in our geography, one by one we take one resources. The chapter is not completed. In this chapter we take one example of natural resources, and that is land, and after that we take the next example, that is soil. Both are the natural resources that we will do in our coming parts. That's all for today. Though even then there is any kind of doubt, question in your minds, please send your comment. I'll reply you. Thank you.